Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the after party. I'm No White Guilt, and with me is the Great Order. Appearing on the honors roll call today is the good girl, Andrew, Bob, our very own Dainty Brighton, the three Davids, L, P, and S, DB Cooper, Elaine Sabatino, Fiona Inquipper, Jason, the two J's, B and P, the three Johns, G, M, and N, Johnny J, Judson, Keishi, Lawrence, Luke, and Omar, Richard Ryan, and Simon, Sean, Silas, our very own Spartan Warrior Queen, Saint McFreeman, Stephen, Trent, Westward Thought, and because his name begins with a Z, in last, Zippy. It is a ceaseless honor for me to be in this noble struggle for white well-being with so many good people. I salute and thank every single one of you. And now, who was our Super Chat crown winner of last week, you ask? The crown goes to Michael McDonald for investing a total of 89 soul-saving dollars. A big congratulations and thank you, good sir. And second place was Johnny Jones, super chatting $50. Congratulations and thank you as well. Super chat on YouTube or go down on the video's description for a familiar and stimulating alternative. Jared and I evenly share the super chats with our guests here on the after party. Today, we are going to get tapped into one of our community's favorite people, a sailor from the seas, a whale of the waves, the sea god himself, Poseidon. If you all have not seen it, our trident-wielding friend has just released a magnificent video titled Tomorrow Belongs to Us. Once again, he took some of my verbiage and magnified it 100 times over in this video. Please check it out and like that video after we tap out here on Tap. The link is in the description. Poseidon started his work in early 2017 and was censored out of existence within a few months. A second effort resulted in the same outcome. Luckily for us, Poseidon keeps coming back like the waves of the ocean. After that intro, I will now pass it over to my potentially embarrassed colleague, Jared.
I'd like to also thank Sean and Leon. Sean and Leon for their continued support. Yes, Poseidon, welcome back. A great friend of the after party. Why don't we just start by hearing about that video that you just did? I watched it before going live, taking Jason's speech. And when you hear Jason speaking and Poseidon's ability to put together words and images, or excuse me, graphics and music, I should say, in a video, it's quite powerful. So why don't we talk about that, and then we'll get into some more of your recent videos, because you've been on a tear. You have been, anyone that hasn't been on Poseidon's channel recently, this guy has been on a rampage. So it was high time to have him back. With Poseidon, our good friend, welcome back to the after party. Why don't you tell us a little about what inspired you to do the video with Jason, and then we'll get to your other videos.
Hello, my brothers. Thank you for inviting me. It's always a great pleasure for me to talk with you and with your audience. What invited me, your words, Jason's and Jared's both. You are both very inspiring. I admire the way you can express yourself. I wish I could express myself so good in English. So sometimes when I see something inspiring, I just clip it and I try to add the visuals, the images that I think would enhance the message and make it even more eye-catching. So this video that I uploaded today, actually I made this last year. It's an old video, but Last year I wasn't so good at editing. I was at my beginning. I was just learning editing, and I re-edited this video today, and I tried to make it. I added graphics, I added some effects, some words, and I tried to make it more powerful.
Ooh, that mute button just disappears sometimes. Well, you've certainly come a long way in your editing skills over this last year. Jason, you were about to say something.
I was just going to say, I can't thank Poseidon enough for the hard work that he does, taking the verbiage that for me was in a moment and was able to reach some people on whatever level, and then recasting it, putting it into a new form in this far more emotional way that is going to grip an infinitely larger number of people. I cannot thank you enough for your service to white well-being. I deeply appreciate you doing that. All of these acts, we think, and all of you out there in the chat, you think it might be some little thing that you're doing. It might you might put some time into a video. It might be a lot of time that you end up investing in a video. I mean, I think the three of us know very well that sometimes we set out to make a video and it ends up taking infinitely longer than we thought it would. But you invest that time and then you put it out into the seas of the world, if you will, to go continue with the metaphor from earlier. And we don't know. It's easy to be disheartened and think that, well, it's had very little effect. Maybe it had a little, too few viewers that we had hoped. But you never know. It might be the right viewer might see that, and the right viewer might be something on one end of the spectrum, such as a person with great power or great wealth or influence or what have you, that ends up seeing that video and it makes a huge difference. Or maybe it is some individual who would have headed down a dark path and you have just rescued them from that dark path. We don't know how these little dominoes end up playing. It could be something as distant as your message hits somebody at the right moment. They then make the right decisions in their life and head down a salubrious path, and then they have children that become, the next leaders of this cause. They have the child or the children that ends up being the ones that rescue us, that pull us from the jaws, the anti-white jaws of oblivion. So we never know. And this is just a magnificent art form that Poseidon is able to produce. And it's going to reach a great many people. And we've already had, I think, Jilly Storm in the chat say that she's going to be playing that for her children. So this is the kind of thing that people can play for their children, is going to be countering a lot of the anti-whiteism that they're receiving in school. Because it's not just another rant. It's not just a bunch of words that the children perhaps don't understand yet, maybe even many adults don't understand. But there's that visual, that emotional visual that is going to draw the children in. And that's going to resonate with them. And the younger they are, the longer that will stick with them. That'll be a founding stone and keystone of their development for the totality of their lives. So if you are parents out there and you do have young children, play these videos that are safe. We try not to use curse words. Certainly Poseidon has taken some great audio and then put them to these very emotional graphics. So yeah, use these things to your benefit when educating your children. And the rewards are, when those who sow when the times are tough are not going to lack a harvest when the times get good. So remember that, folks. But Jared, please, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, I shared the link in the chat for anyone that's interested. And speaking of the chat, I think we got one of the greatest comments of all time right now in the regular chat from Daughter of Albion. We have a poetic description of Poseidon's voice. So Poseidon, you were saying that you wish you could express yourself like Jason and I do. Well, first of all, I thank you for that, but you express yourself very well too. You are not speaking in your first language. And Jason and I only do shows right now in English. So please don't shortchange yourself. You're a great communicator through your words as well as through your videos, which we're going to be talking about. But just to stay on this detour for one moment, Daughter of Albion said, ladies and gentlemen, that Poseidon's voice, he has one of the greatest voices in our movement. It is, quote, like liquid chocolate. Liquid chocolate, ladies and gentlemen. I actually understand what she's saying. It's that deep, slow voice, but it's comforting. Poseidon, your voice is liquid chocolate. There it is. It's been dubbed here on the after party. What do you think of that?
Oh, that's sorry. That's a great compliment. I'm blushing right now.
Well, thank you. Yes, it was. I'm scrolling up to make sure I said it correctly. That it was daughter of Albion, right? I want to make sure I got this because sometimes these things go quickly, and you say something live on air, and you go back and say, "Oh, wait, I got the wrong information. I'm looking for it."
I've noticed that usually women they appreciate my voice more. So maybe I should use it to attract more women into our movement.
Well, that's a nice segue.
And we can say, actually, we can say this will be the first time ever I've been able to say this about a man's voice, but daughter of Albion, thank you very much.
Yes, it is daughter of Albion.
But it's true that Poseidon's voice is mellifluous. There are very few men's voices I could say that about, but it's definitely true when it comes to Poseidon. Julie Storm is also asking about my shirt. This is the coming home graphic that our very own Phoenix Fire produced. You can see it on the wall on the banner here. And I have one of the first shirts that now has this new graphic on it. If you're interested, you could head over to NoWhiteGuiltCollectibles.com. And please, everybody, let's get a round of applause for Phoenix Fire for all the hard work that she is doing for white well-being as well. And we can include applause there for Poseidon for his great video that he just produced. It takes a lot, and we are not funded by Soros and company and the other billionaires, trillionaires, and people who print the money so they have infinite sums. So since we are not, this takes the love, sweat, and tears of our people. And so we need to be appreciative and acknowledge that. Plaudits to you all. Thank you very much.
Yes, and for Jason's speech as well. A lot of that Poseidon takes are just from off-the-cuff speeches that Jason's giving on these shows. It's quite a thing to behold. So for Jason and Poseidon, please, let's get some love in the chat. And as I was saying, speaking of Poseidon's malted liquid chocolate voice, yes, it is true. We have to develop these skills of speech, of communication, of storytelling, because a lot is said underneath the words. We have to be masters of communication and wield that power for good, because we know that our enemies have been wielding it for ill for too long. So again, it is an honor to be with men like this who are such amazing communicators. So with that liquid chocolate, it reminded me of I think it's ASMR. Is it ASMR?
Yes, that's it.
ASMR, it's not AMSR, right? ASMR, probably audio sensory something. Tell me what it is. But Poseidon's been doing, as I said in the beginning, Poseidon has been on a tear. He's really been producing some amazing content and putting out stuff almost every day. And Poseidon, you're trying out different approaches. And one of them, we're going to talk about all of them and the content itself, of course, and what's going on in Europe. But you did this ASMR stream, and it was amazing, where you just spoke over these drone images of all of these flights over beautiful European lands and architecture. Could you just tell us a little about that? And I'm curious where you got all this drone footage from?
Well, I tried different approaches because after November 2018, they started shadow banning my channel, and it's really difficult to break through the algorithm. So I'm trying different tricks to reach a new audience. One of the tricks I used was the Clown World series that we will talk later. And now the ASMR. Many told me jokingly during streams that I talk like someone who does ASMR. So I took the challenge. Someone once commented, "You're doing political ASMR." So I thought, well, let's try it. So 2 days ago, I decided to do a stream with no content. I had no subject. I had no news to read. I had no guest. I made a playlist with very slow ambient music, and with drone footage from mostly from European countries, but also from the US, from New Zealand, Australia, from our countries. Now, because YouTube is very strict about streaming copyrighted content, all the music I selected, I found it through the free YouTube music library. And the drone footage, it was all actually footage that I found searching for hours on YouTube that was labeled as Creative Commons. So you are free to use it. So I took free music and free footage. I combined it with, and I laid my voice over it. And I was taking in questions from the chat and from donations through Streamlabs. And I was just answering questions, and the conversation went into a lot of different subjects. And it was interesting. People liked it, so I decided I will do this weekly. I will do this every week because I think it was successful.
It makes sense because your streams are a little bit of that already. Because somehow I'm usually, full disclosure, not a fan of when people have music going on. I find it too distracting. But you actually use music very well in your streams. You have it at the right volume. You speak over it. I notice that you have some technical setup where when you speak, the music automatically gets lower. Poseidon is good on the tech stuff. He's definitely been an advisor to Jason and I when we've had questions, very generous with his time and his thoughts. So your streams, as they are, have that quality. I know what the person meant. And by the way, ASMR, it's not autosensory, it's autonomous sensory meridian response. So it's that chill that goes up your spine when something is stimulating you, right? So your streams had that quality already, and you just kind of took it to the next level. You did something called ASMR stream, and it was particularly comfy, I guess we could say. You're good at that. Your voice lends itself to that. So I'm glad you're going to be doing that. You are also doing these poetic videos where, and not necessarily the clown world, although we'll get to clown world too, where you're just not even commenting on things. You're showing contrasting footage with music, and that's it. So this is all born out of that necessity, essentially, to circumvent the censorship, you're saying.
Yes. On most of my videos, I don't express my own opinions because I'm afraid they would use my opinion against me in order to censor me, in order to ban me. They've done this a lot of times in the past. So I try to express what I believe, what I'm feeling through images, through music. This is why I always use background music in my videos. And in the Clown World series, I have a huge collection of clips that I was collecting for years from YouTube, from Facebook, from Twitter, and there are so many funny and also triggering clips that I decided I could combine them, and I created a type of a product. So each video was 5 clips with fast edits, fast cuts, the same music every time, the same graphics, the same style, a different music for a a short intro. So I created a format, and I used the exact same format on 15 videos, and each day. So it was such a daily thing, but it was exhausting. After 15 videos, I needed a break. And so I ended season 1. And in 2 weeks, I will start season 2. I have to collect new material. And also because I'm afraid that YouTube might even give me a strike for these Clown World videos, I started moving them to a new channel. I created a new channel called Clown World. And one by one, I'm moving them there. So season 2 will be on a dedicated channel about Clown World.
When you have a moment, please share that Clown World channel in the link, in the chat, the link for it, please.
Yes, of course. One moment and I will find it. I will share it.
Yeah, we'll put it in the description as well to make sure everybody has access to it in the replay.
If you go and watch my last Clown World video, number 15, it's the only one that's still on my channel because the first 14 episodes are already moved. There is a link in this video about the new channel. Also, if you go to my channel on the feature channels, there are all my backup channels and the Clown World channel. So it's easy to find it, but I will try to find it and also give it in the chat.
So you already answered my follow-up question. So season 2 is coming in 2 weeks. Now, are you going to premiere them on the Poseidon channel and then migrate them to the Clown World channel, or are they going to premiere on the Clown World channel?
No, they will be on the Clown World channel, and one of the reasons is that through these videos, they were very well received, and within 3 weeks, I got about 4,000 new subscribers.
Wow.
But I don't want to transform Poseidon into a clown.
Right.
Yes, I have a different. The mission of my channel is different. It's more educational, not so much satire. So I don't want people to know me as someone who's making clown videos. So I decided that maybe it's better to shift them over to another channel and keep this channel more with pro-white well-being content.
Let me jump in really quick with our first super chat by way of the familiar alternative. Barbie Chan went down on the description and super chatted $10. Thank you very much for that kind contribution to white well-being. She writes, I salute you, good sirs. We cannot put a dollar value on the impact and importance of your work. You will have your mark on history as some of the greatest men who contributed to awakening and saving our folk. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that kind super chat. And everyone, once again, you can super chat here right on YouTube or down in the description for the familiar alternative as Barbie did. Thank you very much for that.
Also, I want to thank you both because before we started the stream, I was about a dozen subscribers before hitting the 20,000 mark. And during our stream, I hit the 20,000 subscribers mark. So thank you. And tonight is a special celebration for me.
Well, I'll have to tweet that out. That's great news.
That is great news. That's a big mile marker.
Should we take credit for that? Is that what you're saying? That we helped maybe spreading the word, get you over the hump?
Yes, I was watching the subscriber count live, and it happened thanks to your show. It happened right 2 or 3 minutes ago.
That's great. I'm sure we know it would have happened anyway, but we'll take it. We'll all celebrate together. It's fitting. So thank you for that. The Clown World meme itself, is that something, have they labeled that a hate symbol?
Yes. I've read news where they say they are already labeling it as something hateful, a hate symbol. And I've seen, I think 2 weeks ago, I saw a channel that was dedicated in this type of videos that grew very fast. Within 1 month, it got over 20,000 subscribers, and they deleted it. So I think they will start targeting this type of content. And this is another reason why I prefer to move it to a separate channel. I don't want to endanger my main channel.
So this was another type of clown world. They were showing what videos of anti-white shenanigans, anti-white precepts, that sort of thing, and then mocking it. Is that what it was?
It was exactly the same. It had videos the same style as my video. So small compilations of strange political phenomena with
Right.
some clown music, some honks, and yes, they deleted the channel with one blow, not even 3 strikes. And I think they realized that this new meme, it's actually effective. It's reaching a new audience, and they don't want that. They don't like this. They don't want a new audience to find our community. So they will label it as hate speech. Probably the ADL will put it on their
Hey,
symbols.
It's powerful. It's powerful because mocking the things that they, being irreverent is extraordinarily powerful. And if you look back through the history of the West, you see how anti-whites used irreverence to undermine things that were very important to us in Western civilization. It is a very powerful tool because it's acerbic. If you can laugh at the things that they demand you be very serious about, then that is undermining what they seek to accomplish. So I strongly encourage those who seek to press forward the fight, stand up for white well-being in this way, to mock the anti-whites as best they can. And it does a couple things, because it also shines a different light on those who object to anti-whiteism. The anti-white narrative has set up this dichotomy where you are either a good person, beautiful, intelligent, likable, etc., if you're anti-white, or you are not anti-white. Remember, we don't speak with the language of white oppression, so we don't use their verbiage. So if you are not anti-white, then you are ignorant, hateful, mean, always ill-tempered, sort of boorish person. And when you are instead having a laugh, having a joke, having a lark at their expense, you detonate many of those stereotypes that people have been infected with, this idea that we're just evil, we're always unhappy people, etc. No, have a good time. Take their anti-white idiocy, run clown music over it, run the circus, throw a tent over top of that circus, and have a laugh. They're banning these channels and banning that material because it is effective, for the same reason why these governments in Europe are preventing white well-being, or doing what they can to prevent going free and white well-being from reaching the populations there. Now, I'm wondering, just for a technical aspect before we move forward, since I am keeping the microphone, I'm not sitting right up on the microphone as I used to, I wonder if I might go naked and see what happens. I wonder if I might go naked and see what happens. So let's see. You all can tell me if this makes a difference. I'm slowly going naked now. As you all can see, I'm very slowly going. There we go. So you all can tell me if this makes any difference while I'm talking.
Was that some kind of ASMR visually?
I don't know, but as the show goes on today, you all can tell me, are you hearing those plosives? Are you hearing those problematic sounds?
You have to say words with P's. So far, you sound good.
Okay, well, we'll see. We'll keep the mic here. I won't sit up on it. And if this works, then I will stay naked for the rest of the show, and maybe do all subsequent shows naked. And I will, again, with something a little bit salacious, pass it over to Jared.
Jason's in a mood today. I don't know. Ladies, send emails. I don't know what's going on.
Samantha Fox just showed up. Take a look at this in the chat. Take a look at her hair.
Who showed up?
Magnificent. Samantha Fox, I think it is. She just disappeared on me.
Well, I have something to posit to both of you gentlemen and the chat. So the fact that the clown world meme, and I love that, the Pepe with the clown nose and the multicolored afro and the honk honk, it's perfect. It's perfect, right? We had the NPC thing late last year, and now clown world. These guys are just killing it. They're encapsulating what's going on, and Jason's absolutely right about having to kill these sacred cows. So check this out. The clown world meme being labeled as hate speech is itself clown world. That's clown world, right? So I want to put this challenge out to everybody. Maybe we could do like a Russian doll. You know, I like those Russian dolls. I've used them as serious metaphors, but this is a little more lighthearted. Why don't we do some kind of meme, some visual with nested Russian dolls at the smaller and the larger and the still larger and the bigger one of that clown, of that Pepe clown? Because when they do something like labeling clown world meme as hate speech, that's clown world. So you can attack that. And then they're going to attack that level. And you could say, well, attacking us again, that's clown world. No matter what they do, it's like this meta thing, all those layers. It's always going to be clown world. They keep going after you. And I say, we talked to James Edwards about this. You know, when you get on these lists, I think that we should have these little statues, you know, like, Jason, we should be aspiring to be on some of these hate lists. I know we're on some small websites right now, but when we get a big one, like we're on the Southern Poverty Law Center, we should have like a little award ceremony. We should have we should make some kind of a trophy and show it on air. You know, we have to have fun with this because we don't care what these people think.
Right.
They're not legitimate in our eyes. We have the upper hand. And yeah, specifically, that's my challenge. Clown world, Russian doll style. Labeling clown world is itself clown world. It's meta. Go with it. So do something with that.
We have two more super chats. We have Bam Bam super chatting with $25. Thank you very much for that kind investment in white well-being, and writing nothing, but thank you. We have also the Thin Red Line super chatting with $10. Thank you very much, and writing thank you to the panel for all their work for white well-being. I have now got a VPN and can watch you from Europe again. Well done. Please pass that on to everyone who is.
I think they're trying to send a message. You're all robot-y and your visuals messed up. It's clown world. Clown world. Someone's listening. Hi guys. We're just trying to save our people, guys. We're not bad guys. We have a lot of fans. We have a lot of fans, let's just say, that don't show up in that little count of how many people are viewing under the YouTube video you're watching right now. Maybe Jason, speak again and see if you're okay now.
Am I okay now, or am I still roboting?
Your voice is good, but the visual is now a little unclear. It just came in a better focus. I think we'll be okay.
All right. Well,
Poseidon, what do you think of that, Poseidon? Do you think that was a coincidence, or do you think they're trying to send a signal? Do you think we have a fourth person here on the chat on the panel that we're not seeing?
We certainly have, not only a fourth, and I can prove it. Recently, I found this information, and I want to make a video about it. Give me 2 minutes to explain. So I found this story. In the UK, they had secret agents, secret police assigned to infiltrate various organizations. And these organizations, I found the names were from Antifa to Greenpeace. So we're not talking about ISIS. We're not talking about something very difficult or dark. And they infiltrated with agents of these organizations. They would monitor everything. And they went so far that the agents, they married women that they met in the organizations. They had children with these women. And when the assignment was over, they just disappeared. And then the women, they went to a judge, and they settled for a few £1 million. 7 cases of agents who were undercover for decades and married and had children. And when I read this story, and this happened in the UK, in Denmark, in Germany, in many European countries. When I read this story, I wondered, if they considered a danger Greenpeace and they infiltrated with agents for decades Greenpeace, who do they consider a danger today? And who would they try to infiltrate and monitor and control today? And we know the answer. So, of course, they are watching. Of course, we have case officers. Each one of us has case officers who monitor our live streams live. And of course, they are collecting information. And when we say something that they don't like, they might create from technical difficulties to shutting down the stream live.
I've heard you tell that story before, and it's chilling about how organizations like Greenpeace were infiltrated by people who were willing to have these whole fake lives with members and marry people. Now, we're supposed to be propagating ourselves, and I don't know, you got two guys here who are chats trying to marry off, and I don't know, Poseidon, you're scaring me off. What am I going to do? How am I going to trust any lady out there? What if she's a government agent? I thought I'm supposed to have like 10 kids. What do I do about this?
I think
no answer to it.
Are you there, Poseidon? Did they get you?
No, I'm here. I couldn't hear or see Jason.
Yeah, that threw us off. Jason, you just disappeared for a second.
I thought we lost him.
Spartan Warrior Queen had a great idea. She said that we should do clown trophies when this happens. So I sent a link in the chat, by the way, to a Pinterest clown trophy. It doesn't look quite like our beloved Pepe clown, so maybe we'll have to have someone design one. But yeah, I don't know. We're trying to increase the fertility, and I know that that's something you wanted to talk about, so maybe we can segue into that. But scare us off a little bit with what you just said about infiltrators.
Yes, I believe we have agents watching us, and we probably have agents posing as members or as as creators in the movement. This is their work. This is what they do in every movement, and of course they will do this in our movement too. So we have to. I'm not saying to be suspicious of everyone, but always keep in mind that they are watching, and always be careful of what you say and what you type. I say this to my audience every time on every stream. You can say anything you want if you say it in a smart way. Don't give them the excuse, don't give them the wrong words that they will actually use against us, because they want to portray us as evil maniacs. Don't give them fuel for these allegations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as what Jason said earlier about having fun with it is true, you do have to be smart. You're responsible for what you type and what you write, and you should know the score. You know, anyone that's not a child should be well aware of that if you're participating in this online. Spartan Warrior Queen is on fire. She was going to join us today, but it's better for her to be in the chat. She's getting over a little cold, so we understand that. But we love you, Spartan Warrior Queen, and I'm sure that we'll be speaking to you soon. But as always, she's modding. And she said that instead of like, the Tonys, the Oscars, the Grammys, we'll have the Pepes. So I think Spartan Warrior Queen is just conceiving this whole award show. Maybe she should be just the director of an award show. Maybe we can shoot for something like that in 2020. We've been talking, you were mentioning fertility. So maybe, I don't know, it seems to be on Jason's mind today. We're having a freewheeling fun stream here, folks. We're in a bit of a mood. So I know you wanted to talk about fertility, Poseidon, so I think the stage is set. Why don't we get into that portion of the conversation?
Thank you. This is my favorite subject. I think, and also our enemies also believe the same. So I learned this by watching closely our enemies. They think demographics is destiny, and they're using demographics to conquer us. And we must start thinking about how we will improve our birth rates, because we have a huge problem. And there are some problems that you can solve them by voting for the right political party and applying some new laws. So you can vote for someone like Matteo Salvini, like they did in Italy, and close the ports, or build a wall like Donald Trump did, or stop immigration or deport illegals.
Wait. Donald Trump built a wall?
It's satire.
Oh.
Many
I
people
was getting excited. I was like, maybe I've been, off on the news recently and I missed something. Go ahead.
No, it was a joke. Sometimes I like to pick a little on Donald Trump because he didn't exactly do everything he promised. But as I was saying, there are political solutions that can be implemented very fast if we have the political will. But birth rates, it's very difficult to change the birth rates to convince people to have more babies. And even if you manage to convince them to have more babies, you will see the results after decades. You will need a generation to see a new society with more of our people and younger people, especially because we have a double problem. We have low birth rates, so there are fewer of us being born than the people that die, but also we live more years on average than our ancestors lived. So our population is becoming, we are becoming fewer and older. The average age is older, and that's bad. Uh, if we continue on this path, even if we closed our borders, even if we deported anyone we wanted to deport, we would still disappear just like the dinosaurs disappeared in about 100 years. And we would disappear because we are not having enough babies. So this is a very important subject. And I have looked a lot into what caused this, because we must understand the mechanism that caused the low birth rates in order to find the solution. Now, of course, we know that there are powerful people with interests who influenced us. But how exactly did they do it? So I have read dozens of studies about this subject from not only from our countries, from all over the world. And I will start by mentioning one study. The first study they did decades ago was in India. So in India, girls about 50 years ago, they didn't go to school. They didn't send girls to school. And they had extremely high birth rates. And then the government decided to make an experiment. And in just one region of India, they started sending girls to school. And the girls who went to school, just in this region, were allowed, and only these girls, to go to the university, to the college, if they wanted. Now, this was an experiment. They wanted to see how this would affect the Indian society if girls were allowed to go to school. And they saw that the birth rates dropped drastically when girls went to school. And after that, many similar studies were done all over the world. And it's now a fact that female literacy and birth rates, these two numbers are influencing each other. So high female literacy means low birth rates. And we see it practically in all of our countries. We see it. Women who go to college have, on average, less children than women that don't go to college. In the UK, I read a study, 1 in 3 college graduates has 0 children. 1 in 3. And it's also logical. You can understand how this works, because when a girl finishes school and then goes to college, and then, of course, if she spends so much time and money and effort to go to college, then she will want to work and have a career this consumes a lot of years. And suddenly at 30, 35 or 40, she realizes, oh, I forgot to make babies. But sometimes it's too late biologically. So educating women means lower birth rates. This is the one factor. Now, I'm not suggesting to stop sending girls to school. This would be too radical. But, and of course, many people will say, well, my wife, she went to college and she had 6 children. Yes, there are outliners, but on average, the more the women are educated, the less children they have. And we need to find a trick. Maybe give them some benefits, maybe give them lower taxes. We need to find a trick to convince the educated women to start making more babies and at a sooner age. And I think this is the one main reason why our birth rates are low and why you still see high birth rates in other societies. And even we have many migrant populations, migrant groups who come into our countries, but because they still have their own culture, they send their girls to school, but after school, they force them to marry. They don't send them to college. And you see, even though they live in our countries, they have high birth rates.
Yeah, I have a few things on that. First of all, Poseidon sent us a document from the United Nations. It's related to a video that he recently did about replacement migration and how they've done all of these studies about declining birth rates in North America and Europe and all of these different scenarios, these 5 different possible scenarios they have and what to do about it and how many migrants would have to come in per year to have it straightened out by 2050. So first of all, Poseidon, if there's a way, I know that you shared it with us on Google Documents, and I don't know if there's anything in that that's private, but if there's a way to share it or if that link is under a video description, please do tell us and share that in our chat. You highlighted some things, and I was browsing through it before we went live, and it's very sobering. I mean, I'm not one of these guys that is statistic obsessed. You probably know that about me if you listen to this show or you watch my channel. But still, we have to use all the different parts of our brains. We have to assess different data points in different ways. And it certainly is sobering to see this. Also, and this is a kind of a side conversation, I'll just plant this seed for either of you to comment on after I'm done. It's fascinating to consider that the UN is putting all this energy, certainly a lot of brain power and time to do these studies and put these reports together and discuss them and have panels and committees, I'm sure. And yet they didn't say why it is that they need all of these people in these countries in the first place. The implication, of course, is that our economic system is so damn debt-based at this point that it's baked into the cake and they need these drones, they need these workers. If we had different structured societies, we could perhaps absorb these ebbs and flows, because sometimes there are natural ebbs and flows of population a little more easily. So that's one point. Now, with what you're saying, we also have to, as many often do, and it's wise to do so, we have to delineate between education and formal schooling. So my 2 cents, obviously, I don't want there to be women out there, especially our women. White women create white men. And we need our amazing white women to be smart white women in their own way so that they can pass certain things on to their daughters and their men, their boys who will become men. So I don't think any of us here would want to look Lana Locktev in the eye or Mother Hen or any of our other wonderful women and tell them that they shouldn't be educated or something like that. And these are women who have families. So we have to keep that kind of thing in mind. I know in the chats and on social media, sometimes some of the younger guys get a little out of hand with this, but this topic, we have to keep our head screwed on right. We have to have the proper nuance and perspective on this. we also have to realize that even if you're talking about more formalized school, I know, Poseidon, you use the example of India, this experiment going on there, and I'm curious as to what was going on in the schools there, but especially in the Western world, if you know about what they were educating the girls in, please do share with us. But we know what's been going on in the Western world, especially since 1945. If you had a country that put its people first, that the most important thing was not the GDP, but it was the health of the people, and everything was based on that. That was your first and last word, and it was a homogenous country, and there was more unity among all the classes and strata. Then do you think that when some women who did go to formal education and went on to higher education, do you think that they'd be getting anti-natal messaging there, anti-family messaging there, anti-tradition messaging there? No. They, in fact, if guys like us were running the show, they'd be getting steeped in all kinds of European history and tradition and everything that makes us us, and they'd walk out of those schools more excited than ever to be of their particular ethnicity, to be of European heritage in general. So we also have to make sure that we are very careful about delineating that. It's definitely not education per se. Education happens at the home. Education could be crafts and homemaking and things like that. Obviously, it doesn't have to be in a school. And even with school, it's the kind of school, it's the kind of culture that we have. It's what's being taught in the school. So we do have to be very precise about things like this. I don't think, I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I don't think any of the men here on this show are getting up here and saying that, after 12 years old, women just shouldn't be educated in anything and it's okay if they don't read. I'm a relatively smart guy. I'd need a smart wife. So I can't sit here and say that I don't want women to be educated, but we have to be able to put a fine point on these things and discuss it with the kind of nuance that I'm presenting here to parse through it. I'm curious what you two have to say on that.
Well, before we get to that, and first of all, am I robotic or grainy? Or am
You're looking and sounding good, my friend.
Well, if it starts going robotic or grainy, just jump in right away so that we can prevent them from undermining what we're doing here. But we do have a couple super chats I want to read first. Peaceful Sunset super chatting by way of the familiar alternative, $14. Thank you so very much. Writing, our children will need each other, maybe more so than we need each other now. Chat, speaking to the chat, these three men are great brothers to our people, but they will be even greater uncles. We must not let them down. Grow our family. Thank you very much for that sage advice, Peaceful Sunset, and the wonderful super chat. Elaine Sabatino, a great member of our rapidly growing community, super chatting $5. Thank you very much, Elaine. And writing, censorship and anti-white idiocy is turning me into a spurg. I'll try to behave. Delete my comments, but don't ban me. Love you guys. Great guest as usual. Thank you very much, Elaine, for the super chat and your comment. And we have Seven Serpents super chatting with $10. Thank you very much for that kind super chat. There is a lot of history behind the sacred clown exposing hypocrisy and corruption. Honk, honk. Thank you very much, Mr. or Mrs. Serpents, for the kind investment in the cause of white well-being. I will say about this, I don't doubt, I would like to see the data. I don't doubt at all that there is a negative correlation. I'm curious to see the actual studies and see what the correlation is, how close to 1 it is. But that there is a negative correlation between women going to school and more women going to school and fewer women having children. I can absolutely believe that that's the case. And this is a result of the anti-white narrative. The problem is not women having the right or the privilege. Let's say it. I mean, all of these things are really privileges, being able to go to school, I guess, and be educated by someone other than your immediate family. But it's not that there is a right or a privilege that is available. It is that careers in the anti-white narrative are touted as all that is valuable for a woman, that she has to endeavor with the totality of her life and her best years. And now, mind you, while a woman can be educated at any point in her life, she can really only bring healthy babies into existence at a certain time frame in her life. So she has, that's a great magic that she has, but it's also a great duty that she has, and that is to use that time frame if she's capable, and if other circumstances are right, to perpetuate our people, perpetuate Western kind. She can be educated, she can be artistic, she can be all of that throughout the totality of the rest of her life. But the ability to bring healthy life into existence is a very limited time space of the totality of her life. So what do women need? They need to be given the choice to decide, do they want to see a career in some cubicle somewhere as the totality of their life, or do they want to see the rearing of a proud and healthy family, or do they want something that is rearing of the family first and then a little bit of a career after the fact? They need this option. Right now, they don't have an option, and you're not given an option when you are told from kindergarten that a woman who has children and stays at home is dumb, she's backward, she's antiquated, the whole idea, you're enslaved. When you're told that sort of thing, as within the anti-white narrative, as opposed to you can be this liberated woman, you can be strong, you can be out there and competing with men, enriching some boss while you work all of your fertile years into the earth, so that you cannot bring that joy into this world, so that you cannot actually satisfy that glorious magical ability that you have, which is to grow a child inside of you. That all you forsake all of that, because that is all valueless if you're white. If you're white, it's all valueless. It all has no meaning. What really has meaning, according to the anti-whites, for you as a white woman, is go get that job. Go be some simulacrum of a man. Go be a half man somewhere. Do everything you can to what is this word when you're feigning? You're LARPing. That's what it is. When you're LARPing, go LARP as a man, and that will bring you joy, because the alternative of raising children is for idiots. That is not giving women a choice. You're saying you have the choice. That is the illusion of choice. You're saying you have the choice to either be this strong, powerful, intelligent, attractive, liberated, self dynamo on one hand, or you can be this ignorant, backward, enslaved, foolish, dumb option on the other hand. That is not an option. That is the illusion of a choice. So instead, what we would do, I think, is we would teach young girls that they can go to school, they can get an education, they can fulfill their capabilities when it comes to whatever those intellectual capabilities are. But at the same time, we're going to tell them that motherhood is the most beautiful and glorious thing that a woman can do with her life. That phase of her life is very limited, and if she misses that window of opportunity, she's not going to be able to revisit it. Those years will be gone. So when a woman is told both of those things, I predict that we won't have an issue with a lagging birth rate. We won't have an issue with women deciding, I want to go. I mean, for God's sakes, there are programs now. I read about these every other week or so. There are programs out there that are almost forcing girls into STEM fields. They're saying, you really have to do this. It is your duty to go into the STEM field. Don't be a mother. It's your duty to go into the STEM field. And we're going to make the taxpayer pay for the entire thing. Or this anti-white organization will pay for your entire time there. How many times? I think we probably all know, unless you live under a bridge somewhere, I think we probably have all met on a semi-regular basis these women who spent miserable year after year after year in a laboratory or in a classroom learning these things, only to finally decide, I want out. I have to get out of this. I feel, I'm suddenly 30 whatever years old, and the biological clock is setting off like the atomic siren, and they need to quickly go have a baby. Well, the time is almost up for you to have a baby. You've wasted all of these years. The good guys you could have had are now either they don't want to have anything to do with you because you've been off doing whatever you've been off doing, or they're already married. So what we can do now is we can teach our young girls. This is what matters. This is not going free. And what we do on tap, what we do on in this entire process of white well-being is not just lamenting and talking about the things that are awful in our world. We also talk about constructive things that we can do right now to remedy this white noir with which we as individuals and we as a people are suffering. We are suffering white noir. We are infected with mean pathogens. What can we do right now? If you have little girls, if you have access, if you have nieces, talk to them. Get with them and tell them about the glory of motherhood. You don't have to tell them about how wonderful it will be to go try to be a CEO and spend, hour after hour of their life endeavoring to reach that goal. Because trust me, that's coming from everywhere else in their lives. Talk to them about the glory of motherhood, about how wonderful it is to be surrounded by children, about how wonderful it will be in her old age to be surrounded by loving children who will take care of her, loving grandchildren who will look up to her as a goddess in their lives and who will remember her for a great many years. Because make no mistake, that boss you're working for in that cubicle, he or she, they're never going to remember you. The boss of that boss will never even know your name. So make sure these little girls know what they're giving up when they decide to become a half man, when they decide to LARP as a man in some corporate environment. And also know this, as guys, this idea that environment is somehow wonderful and that's why we're there is ludicrous. We're there because we feel a duty to provide for our families. If we could walk on the rainbow and provide for our families, we would do that. But no, we have to go to the job site. We have to go where the air is contaminated. We have to climb on the steel girders. We have to get into the cubicle and have the boss leering over the 5-foot wall at us. We do that to provide for our families, not because it's this great joy. We're not going to a theme park when we go to work. And all of you women who are out there, in those environments know damn well and good at this point it's not some sort of a theme park where you just it's so glorious that is what you want to do rather than have a family. So the positive thing you can do right now, get to your daughters, get to your nieces, get to your granddaughters and tell them about the joy of motherhood and raising proud and happy families. There's nothing, and I'll pass it back, and I'll give it to Poseidon to see what he has to say since he's spoke the furthest from now, and that is, there is nothing you could do short of curing cancer, short of something of that magnitude. There is nothing that you can do as a woman that will be tantamount to raising a strong and happy family in love for our people and love for our history, children that will go out into this world with a new strength and a new clarity and a new purity, not infected with mean pathogens and ready to recapture our destiny for our descendants. Nothing you can do. If you're not going to be one of those ladies that is going to cure cancer, then you need to really consider having a large, happy, healthy family. And I pass it over to Poseidon.
Someone in the chat said Poseidon can make a new video to this speech. Yes, I think I could make a new video on each of your episodes. So I want to make something clear because many might misunderstand what I said. I'm not talking about the meme of white Sharia. I'm talking about giving incentives and education to women and make them understand that not all of them have to become CEOs. They tried this already in some European countries, in Poland, in Italy, in Hungary. They are giving incentives and they already see more marriages, less divorces, more birth rates. So it is possible. In Hungary, if you have 4 children, a woman that has 4 children, she has 0 taxes, her family, so her husband has 0 taxes for the rest of his life, and she gets a pension. So she has a choice. go to college, and then work for 30 years in order to get a pension, or have 4 children? And so there are ways, and there are other countries. An Austrian painter did this about 70, 80 years ago in Germany, and he created some new legislation that encouraged women to have more birth rates, and it worked. So we can do it. And now something else I want to mention before I forget it. Nature or God gave us a brain to think. It gave us eyes to see. It gave ovaries to women to have children. So they are not, when nature or God gave you eyes, it didn't give you, it's an option. If you want, you can see. If you want, you can keep them closed. No, you use them. So there is a reason why nature gave to the women the ovaries, and not using them is not an option. It's actually going against your own nature. This propaganda they are teaching our women that it's your option, it's your choice. You can choose if you become pregnant. You can choose if you abort your baby. Yeah. No. Nature created all of us for a reason. The apple tree has not a choice to create apples or not. It creates apples because it is its nature to create apples. And nature is wise. Nature created us through thousands or probably millions of years of evolution. And this change happened only very recently. Actually, after World War II, we saw this rapid drop in birth rates. And we are actually going against our nature as a society, as men, as women. And because we are going against our nature, and it is our choice to go against our nature, nature is punishing us by sending us towards extinction, like the dinosaurs. So it's something very important that we have to think about. Again, I'm not saying do not educate women. They should get an education. But do we really need so many women in the police academy? Maybe men are more suited to become cops, and the women who became cops, maybe they were more suited to become mothers. Of course, we need women in many professions, and of course, women must help, but not all of them. I think we can try to convince a higher percentage of women to choose, not to force them, to choose the path that our ancestors chose for thousands of years. Because for thousands of years, women were creating the family, were creating the children and raising them. And it was a man's duty to provide and protect.
Well said. For anyone who doesn't know, it is actually Mother's Day in a few days here in the United States on Sunday. And please excuse, I got up for a moment when you saw me go off the video to shut my windows, but it's still a little noisy outside, so pardon any noise if you hear in the background. I'll try to speak loudly over it, but it is Mother's Day. It is Mother's Day coming up. What is this Sunday, the 12th? I believe it's Sunday the 12th, yes. So I'll be with my mom part of the day, and hello, Mom, if you ever watch, thank you. We'll salute our mothers on this occasion. It's fitting for what we're discussing right now. And we also were joined by fabulous people in our audience, as usual. Racial Consciousness has stopped by again, and Liv from White Date, who we've had the pleasure of speaking to and will continue to, is doing tremendous work for our people with whitedate.net, with White Deal, and even other projects. She has tremendous vision. And you speak about a woman who is serving in different kinds of ways, but also teaching women and testifying that they need to get back in touch with their femininity. So as we were saying earlier, for any of you who just joined over the last few minutes, we love our women, and we felt it was important to have a nuanced conversation about this idea around fertility and education, because in the broader context, and I'm curious what you guys think about this as well, I do understand that the majority of people, they do need guidance in some way. But I've heard a lot of debates, political debates over the last couple of years about how coercive and how heavy-handed our governments need to be. I hear some people say that, if there's a vacuum, something is always going to fill that vacuum. So you have to make sure that there's some kind of positive force in the society. And I think that's true to an extent. I like these ideas that I hear about governments incentivizing family, what Poseidon was saying earlier, and I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with, about tax breaks for families, not having to pay taxes if you have certain amounts of kids. If you have people in the government who are of the people and we're all on the same page, there's always going to be subversive elements in a society. But if they're small and marginalized and you have a healthy, homogenous society where all the different strata of society are on the same page, they know who they are, they love who they are, they're educated in who they are in both the schools, formally and informally at home. I think that it's more maybe akin to what Jason and I were speaking about last week with health, where the more important thing is to take away the toxins rather than go run out and make sure that you have all the best vitamins and supplements and things like that. The body knows how to heal itself. The body wants a state of equilibrium, homeostasis, when you remove the toxins. So I believe that even though, especially our young people, a lot of people, when they're young, they need to fit in, and a lot of us have that copier gene. And that's okay. I'm not saying that in a disparaging way. Most people need to be that way. But when you see young white girls and white boys act like non-whites when that's what's around them in a school, and you might say something like, well, Jason, where's this supposed biospirit that you speak of? If these girls in public schools, they're 12 years old and they slick back their hair and they wear the big hoop earrings because they're surrounded by, Hispanic girls or girls from non-white girls who dress this way, have this different kind of way of dressing and dancing and talking and culture. And yeah, it's annoying. It'll make you scratch your head a little bit. But you have to remember that they're kids, they're copying, they're trying to get along. It doesn't mean that that's who they are at core. And so I do believe that we need our governments to have these incentives, but also we need to trust, like Poseidon said about the apple tree knows how to grow apples. We need to trust the best in our people, that when the poisons are taken away, our natural instincts will flourish and that we will express who we are without these subversive influences around us. I know it's a delicate balance. But I don't think that we are the kind of people, we're a freedom-loving people, and I don't think that we would do well. And there's different hues within European peoples, of course. There's different ethnicities with different, how could you say, different balances of how they view this or how they respond to freedom and power. But I do believe that ultimately, most European peoples, we're headstrong, we're independent-minded, and we're not going to do well with some kind of authoritarian top-down government where every little bit of our possible day is chosen for us. That's not who we are. So the incentives need to be there. The education, the proper education needs to be there, as I was talking about before. The proper choices need to be there. Like Jason was saying, women aren't really presented a choice. It's like, hey, do you want to be this glorious, modern woman with a career? Or do you want to be this stupid little housewife over here? It's not a real choice. It's not presented as a real choice. So culturally and politically, if our people are given a proper choice and the poisons are removed, I think that most of us would eventually choose what is right and what is good. I don't know if any of you have anything to say on that before we move on, because we do have more of Poseidon's videos to get to, but I'll open the floor if anyone has anything to say on that.
I want to add another aspect because I think it's important. It's not just, I mentioned female literacy. influences birth rates. But it's not just that. We are talking about incentives and education that will convince our people to make children. But why do we need this? For thousands of years, no one needed convincing. Why did our ancestors have so many children? No one convinced them. They didn't have any incentives by the state, and they weren't stupid. They had a reason. So I was thinking really hard about this, and I came to the conclusion that they needed children. They didn't do this just because they cared about passing on their DNA or because they loved playing with little cute humans. They needed children to survive. They needed children to survive because imagine if any of us lived 500 years ago on any place on earth. If you were single, eventually, as long as you were healthy, you would be able to find food, hunt, but eventually you would grow old. And if you were single, uh, one day you would break your leg and there would be no one there to help you, no ambulance, no state, no government, no welfare, no benefits, no unemployment, no pension, nothing. You would just die alone somewhere in a cabin or a cave in the woods. So people needed children. They needed to have at least 10 children because they didn't have uh, hospitals and medicine. So they made 10 children, but 2 or 3 died on the way. But they needed a few children to survive because the children carried them on. The children helped them when they grew old. For tens of thousands of years, children were our pension system. There was no pension 200 years ago. The children were taking care of the parents. And if you didn't have children, you died alone and you died at a younger age. While people who had children, they lived more years. And people noticed this and they knew that if they want to live a few decades more, they need to have children and they must start creating them at a young age soon. Also, children were, let's call them, this is not the correct word, but free slaves or free employers. They were helping. Children were helping. They were helping the household, the family economy. So they were wealth. Children were wealth. Now, today we created a system where children are not wealth. Children are an economic burden for many people. At least so they think of them. Also, we created a system where you don't need children. You can be single for the rest of your life. If you need help, the government will take care of you. The ambulance will come. Or if you are unemployed, you will get an unemployment benefit. If you grow old, you will get a pension. If you cannot get out of your home to find food, you will order it through the internet and the food will come, the pizza will come to your door. So you don't need children to survive. And this is why many people don't have children. If we banned any type of welfare, pension, and unemployment benefits today, tomorrow, people would start having children like crazy.
That's actually a really fascinating point, and I think that moving from where we are to a banning on something like pensions or something like that would, of course, be very difficult. But I wonder if it is not possible to. Thank you for raising these thoughts, broaching this subject, Poseidon, because it is fascinating. I wonder if there are economic benefits. Aside from just the benefits, because we can talk endlessly about the very real and tangible benefits of having this love in your life and how it absolutely changes things for who you are and brings so much more value into your being. I have seen people, I regrettably don't have any children, but I have seen friends and family members absolutely change in their being when they bring children into the world. There's so much more meaning to their lives. You can see that they can feel that in themselves. And it's something that those of us without children are really deprived of. And those of us without children very often end up on this endless pursuit of trying to fill this void in their lives with drug and drink and restaurant going and going to professional sports. And we all know these people, these carousers, and they just can't get enough of going out into the nightlife because they're sick. Their spirits are sick. There's something seriously missing. And of course, that there are people out there who are unable to have children, and perhaps they're also not in a state to be able to adopt a white child, which, by the way, just as an aside, from some other conversations I've had, and maybe I will have to get with Poseidon to talk about how I might do this idea of taking calls, but someplace other than OBS because of all of its problems. But I have these conversations. If you know someone who has sought to adopt and they seek a non-white child, they are demonstrating a most virulent anti-whiteism. I mean, that is white noir of the purest form, that they would go outside of, they would specifically choose to go outside of our community to save, rather than save a white child that is ultimately a member of our family, extended albeit. But saving a white child is your family. That is your, I mean, if you're an adoptive parent and you adopt a white child, there's no reason to say that this child is not a member of your family. Absolutely, the child is a member of your family, not just by way of the fact that you are going to parent them and bring them up and be their legal guardians, but because in a very real way, they are of your blood. They are of our spirit. They are your family. If you make a specific decision to go out and select a non-white child, I mean, it's different if, let's say, you could have a scenario where you live in the woods, you live hundreds of miles from anyone, and you open up your cabin door one day and there's a little baby, a non-white baby on your doorstep. There's no one to give the baby to. You're not going to let the baby die. That's completely different than going to these adoptive agencies and saying, I want a little non-white one. I mean, that's completely different. So, and that's what people are doing in modern society. They're specifically going, and of course the anti-whites would applaud this. They would say it's magnificent that they go and adopt the non-white babies, as though there aren't any white babies in need. And of course, we have long since entered the phase where the anti-whites will say there's something wrong with a white person adopting a white baby. Why aren't they white guilted enough that they're going out and putting a non-white baby ahead of their own? Despicable. But there is a fascinating aspect here, and perhaps somebody can work it out with, can children be made to not just appear, but in a very tangible way, be made economically beneficial to a family? Can they be, can there be a structure in government that makes them not just a basic something, 1 + 1 = 2 scenario where you say, well, if you have another child, we will give you, the government, that is the people, will give you an extra stipend or what have you, whatever it ends up being, but some other mechanism. It's a fascinating subject and something that would be interesting to explore, but I'll pass it over to Jared to get his thoughts.
Well, in general, some of it would have to do with those cultural changes as well. Now that people can do more work, and it's not necessarily always tied, if you're doing mental work at least, it's not tied to a specific place. You don't have to go to one office or one school with the way that everything is connected via the web. And then when you work with your hands, as we've talked about on this show sometimes, you can be doing it in a family garden, tending property. So what I'm seeing, and this goes with the whole removing the toxins theme that I was speaking of a few moments ago. You're talking about incentives, Jason, is I want to see family homes stay in the family for multiple generations, and not this ridiculous thing where kids have to start from scratch and work for decades to put a down payment on a home and then pay off a mortgage on homes that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why don't we make homes? And I know people will say, well, the world is different and people have to travel now, but that's what I'm getting at. You can mental work more and more. You don't have to be you can do it remotely. Let's say you could do this kind of work and still be in a semi-rural or even rural area. So there's something to explore there about family estates, about building a house that's meant to stand for decades and generations, build it well, pay it off, own the land, keep it in the family. Why wouldn't you want to have children that you can pass that on to? What about just being buried on the property, being able to see your parents and great-grandparents, grandparents, great-grandparents, under trees or headstones that are off on some part of the property, and having that be a sacred place for your family? When these are just a couple of quick off-the-cuff ideas, but please take not just what I'm saying. There's 100 more ways you could say this, but the spirit of what I'm saying. Please take the spirit of what I'm saying as your guiding star. This is the kind of lifestyle, the healthy, family-oriented lifestyle, not about consumerism and shallow lifestyle signals and what kind of job you have. This is the way people live. Most people lived for most of our time on Earth. And I do believe there is a way to continue that spirit without destroying all of the technology, without hitting a button and saying, well, we're going to nuke it all and start from scratch. I do believe in that oft-used term, archaeofuturism. I do think that we have it in our spirits to find the harmony and the balance between these things, because both of these things have always existed in us. We're a people who wants to conquer the unknown. We're always going to create technologies. Gardening tools are technology just as much as a computer is a technology. So we create technologies, and we have a deep reverence for animals, for the earth, for nature, connection and empathy with it. So these two strands have always been within us. This balancing act has been something we've always been contending with. It's just that the details are different, and the scale, I think the big thing is the scale is overwhelming. Populations and mass transit, that is something that has exploded over the last century or so, more generally since the Industrial Revolution, and that we're still trying to catch up with. So I'm not saying that there aren't complex issues to wrap our heads around and people try to figure these things out, but that is my first kind of thought when Jason talks about the meaning when he posed that question. I just want to quickly say one thing from the chat a while ago. We were talking about, what if we marry spies, if there's spies in our ranks, and Jason and I end up marrying spies? Well, Elaine Sabatino and DM, and I think some other people were saying, well, what we would do, imagine this, Jason, if you start dating a woman and then she's a spy, well, you are so powerful in your message of white well-being that you actually convert her, that she stops working for this government agency or whatever it is. And I thought that would make a great movie. And then I connected it to Spartan Warrior Queen. That would you make a movie about that, and that would probably win Best Picture at the first Pepe Awards. And if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you have to go to the beginning of the stream. You missed a lot of inside jokes, but we're having the Pepe Awards. You're going to have these little clown trophies instead of the Oscar trophy for when our people do good work on YouTube. But obviously we're starting a film industry as well. That's a few years off. And when we do, maybe that'll be the first Best Picture. A female spy tries to infiltrate and take down one of our content creators, only to be herself converted to white well-being. That's Best Picture material in the making there, I think, for the No White Guilt movie studios. But anyway, I think all of this is great as a great segue for another video we wanted to talk about from Poseidon recently. And Poseidon, that is your Who is Family video. Jason was already speaking to this when he was mentioning adoption and some of those issues he raised. So if you could tell the audience a little about that video, what inspired you, and we can see what conversation it inspires now.
Oh, that was actually a live stream. That was
yes, it was
3 or 4 hours. So I will do my best to summarize 3 hours in 5 minutes. I try to explain who is my family, who I consider family, and I consider family people who have similar DNA to me, but also this is important, similar culture. Both of these attributes are important for me. And I will now explain why. By similar DNA, I mean people whose ancestors evolved in the European continent. I'm making this distinction because many would say, well, Iranians are white, or Syrians are white, Turks are white. I'm not even getting into this argument because they didn't evolve in Europe, so they don't have the culture. And there are people with so-called white DNA in Egypt, in various non-European countries, but they don't have the culture. So, in order for you, for me to consider you my brother or my sister, we have to have similar DNA and similar culture. That is what makes us family. Now, there are many people who are nationalists, the civic nationalists, who consider family everyone who has the same nationality, the same. So there are many Americans who are nationalists and consider their brother any American. I cannot feel this connection because if there isn't, because you might have the same culture as every other American, but you don't have the same DNA. You're coming from different continents. Now, there are other people who consider their brother everyone who has the same religion. Muslims have this. They think all the Muslims are their brothers. Christians, many Christians have this. They think all the Christians are their brothers. And there are Christians, there are European Christians, African Christians. I cannot consider my brother someone just because we have the same religion. And then there are people who consider their brother someone just because they have the same politics. So if we both hate a specific tribe, we are brothers. No, I cannot feel this. I think we must have similar DNA and similar culture. So people who lack one of these two characteristics are not my family. And unfortunately, there are many people, even in our community, who might they don't have both, or there are people who they think that we must unite with people of different DNA because we have a common enemy. I disagree with this. I cannot consider my brother someone who comes from, let's say, from Saudi Arabia just because we have the same enemy. I cannot consider my brother someone whose parents came from Nigeria just because we have the same religion or we have the same enemy or because we both are wearing a Make America Great Again hat. So yes, this was the summary of 3 hours. We need similar DNA and similar culture to consider someone a brother. And I also, in the second part of the stream, I went into many data, many graphs about the composition of the DNA of the European people, because it's interesting. Many people say, Greeks are not white, or North Italians are white, South Italians are not. And this is all complete bullshit, because all Europeans, their DNA consists of a mixture of three big DNA groups that actually created the European population and evolved together. Now, the difference between Greeks and Norwegians, or Germans and people from Spain, is that they were created by the same three ingredients, but with a different recipe, with different percentages. Also, there are some influences, because we always had somehow open borders in Europe. There are some influences from Asia and from Africa in many European countries. But this is important. These influences are very small. So yes, in some parts of Spain or in some parts of southern Italy, they might have 3% African DNA. But this does not mean that everyone has it. This means that some people in these areas have, let's say, 6% African DNA, while others have 0. So you can never draw a conclusion for a specific individual based on statistical averages. This is mathematically and statistically wrong. It's like because I've heard a geneticist on YouTube who said Greeks are not white. Okay, I could say Americans are not white because they have 30% African DNA. And scientifically, mathematically, I'm correct. 13% of the DNA pool in the US is from Africa. But not everyone has 13% African DNA in the US. 13% of the population has probably 90% African DNA, and the rest has probably 0 or 1% African DNA. So if I said Americans are not white because on average they have 13% African DNA, I would be an idiot. So when someone says that this European country, they are not white because they have 4% Middle Eastern DNA or 3% African DNA, they are actually idiots or liars, because not everyone is affected by this. I have traveled in most European countries. I've seen people, for instance, let's talk about Greece, because I live in Greece. I've seen people in Greece who look more like Egyptians, but I've also seen people in Greece who look exactly like Jared.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a direct descendant of Plato.
You actually, you could be. You could be.
Well, I just want to, because as you're talking, I'm thinking about this, Poseidon, and that is, first of all, anyone who endeavors to bifurcate or split up Western kind in any way, shape, or form is being anti-white. So that's just period. We don't have to decide where night ends and day begins when it comes to who is white, because time and conflict is going to decide that for us. As things get worse, those who are white are going to end up on the victimized side. It won't matter how anti-white you are. Sure, there'll be a few white anti-whites that will be allowed to be a face in amid the anti-white panoply of faces. But for the most part, time and conflict is going to determine who is and who is not white. There is no problem determining who's white for the anti-white, specifically when it comes to who they're going to discriminate against, who it's legal to discriminate against, who needs more diversity, who has no culture, who needs to have their neighborhoods broken up and what in the US is called Section 8 housing. They have no problem then. They have no problem determining who's white when there is, they want to diversify. And remember, folks, every time the anti-whites say diversify, you say it like it is. You say, why do you want fewer white people? Because that is what diversity is. Don't let these anti-whites get away with this artificially constructed moral framework that they can then pontificate to you from. Do not allow that. Why do you want to discriminate against white people? Why do you want to hire fewer white people who deserve the jobs? Why do you want to lay off white people who deserve the jobs and who need the money to be able to pay for the resources that they bring to their families? Why do you want to discriminate against whites? Because that is what diversity means every single time. It means fewer white people. It means your ass is next. So when somebody comes along and they want to say, well, this group or that group isn't white, all that they're trying to do is either in their ignorance or in their malevolence, in malintent, they want to break us up. They want to divide their victim because it's easier to conquer a divided victim than it is a united foe. So that is what you have to understand right away. We don't need to peer down into a microscope and say this or that is white or not white. All we have to do is continue to fight the good fight for white well-being, and those lines will be drawn in the sand by those who intend to eradicate us, to commit white erasure upon all of civilization around the world. That is as simple as it needs to be. Never again another conversation about whether or not there's so much this or so much that in somebody's bloodline or in some country or what have you. Those are all arguments that are advanced by idiots or people with malintent, genuine anti-whites. And in both cases, you can correct them on the spot by saying, why would you divide us? Why would you be so anti-white? And that will immediately reveal what and who you are dealing with. If it's someone who is just being stupid, then they'll backtrack and think hard about what they're saying. If it's somebody who means malintent, then they will stick with it. But this isn't white, or that might be white. And then they ultimately come to the conclusion, don't they, that there is no such thing as the white race. That's what it ultimately comes down to with the anti-whites. So this is all about this. And mind you, those who are old enough to know this, you should remember that this has all been incremental. The anti-whites didn't start at year X and then say everything from here forward is anti-white. And so at year X, I mean, could you imagine, let's say 1900, the government saying, and the institutions, the media saying, and your university saying, there's no such thing as the white race? No, they did it incrementally. And you can expect the exact same sort of attacks as we continue to grow. It is going to be this incrementalism of attacks against us. They'll say, well, you know what? The white population isn't going to accept anymore that there's no such thing as a white race. So now what we'll have to do to undermine their effort to resist our victimization is we're going to have to convince them that this group will cleave that group off, and then we'll cleave this group off. This little group isn't white anymore. Who's really white among you now? And then they'll narrow it down to the tiniest group possible so that they can easily defeat us again. Don't let that happen again. They'll do the same thing with men and women. They'll do the same thing with parents and children. Do not allow them to do this again. They'll do the same thing with different regions. They'll do the same thing with our different ethnicities. There's no more divisions. They attack us because we are Western kind. You are harmed because you are a member of Western kind. You will be safe when Western kind is safe. The lines of battle, the lines of conflict, the line of demarcation will be drawn by time and conflict, and that's it.
Now, Poseidon, there are people walking around Greece that look like me, but are there people walking around Greece that look like Jason?
So passionate, I don't think. I think I must clip his last bit again. This could become a separate video. You know, Greece. Imagine Greece is. Imagine the U.S. after a few centuries. So there were some foreign influences in Greece, but not as much as people think. And proof for this is that although Greece was occupied by the Ottoman Empire for 4 centuries, less than 2% of Greeks in a very small region in northern Greece are Muslims. Greeks kept their religion. Greeks did not mix with them. Greeks actually, we have many stories about that time, about Greek women dancing. There was a dance called the dance of Zalongo, where Greek women, they prefer to dance and fall over a cliff than to be captured by Turks and raped. So no, there wasn't race mixing happening in Greece on a huge scale. Greeks managed to keep their DNA. I'm not saying that that's 100%. Of course, in every country, there are some mixing. In the stream I did, it was interesting that there is Celtic DNA in Greece. There is Germanic DNA in Greece. There is Iberian DNA in Germany. So we've been living this big, beautiful family on this continent for thousands of years. We've been moving. We've been having wars. we've been capturing each other, we've been probably raping. So, of course, there was some mixing all over Europe, and in every European country, there is a small percentage of DNA from all over Europe. And this is why I consider all Europeans my family. But again, I must make a distinction. DNA is not enough. You also need to have the same culture, because an example I used in my stream is communists. There are Europeans who are communists. I'm sorry, I cannot consider them my brother, because although we might have the same DNA, if you choose this political ideology, or there are other Europeans who choose some specific non-European religions. If they choose these ideologies, I stop considering them as my brothers, because this is where our paths go their separate ways. I cannot consider someone my brother if he's praying 5 times a day on a carpet, or if he has a...
Do you consider that a temporary state, though, of course, because the blood is still there, the biospirit is still there? So
No.
if they reform, if they changed, then the possibility exists that because they share the European DNA, that they could one day again be your brother.
No, you can call me racist.
So if a white guy becomes Muslim, that's it with Poseidon forever.
Yes, or if he makes a tattoo of a hammer and sickle, yes, that's it. Once a communist, it's always a communist. Our people should never cross this line.
Some might argue that is some kind of strange recessive trait expressing itself, and that there's going to be a split in our people. There's a lot of interesting ways to view it. I know there's some discussion of viewing it as such, that there's kind of a culling of some kind of self-hating gene that's in there. Obviously, a lot of our people are infected by meme pathogens and are just going with the fashion. But for the people who genuinely have this kind of makeup, where it's like these animals that get these viruses in them, where they do something to harm their own herd or commit suicide, it's almost something like that they're so susceptible to such harmful ideologies that work against them. I know there's a lot of interesting postulation around that sort of thing. You mentioned, Poseidon, that there were 3 different main ingredients. Could you speak to that? And also, while you're on that subject, if you could touch on this, I have heard some people defend the darker Southern Europeans by saying that sometimes they have those features, in fact, not because of Muslim occupation from the Arabic world or Northern Africa, but because there's actually more germane European traits that are a little darker, and that some of those people have ancient roots that go back to Anatolia or Eastern Europe, where there were just people who had these darker features, and that when you see a Southern Italian or a Spaniard or Portuguese person that has these darker features, it doesn't necessarily mean that somewhere down the line they have Arabic, North African Muslim descendants, that there's actually a pool that is wholly native European, but it has those darker features, and that they came from these areas of Anatolia and the far reaches of Eastern Europe. So if you could speak to some of that.
Now we are getting into very complicated data. I must share 2 graphs in order to explain this, because we need to see it visually. Can I share my screen?
Please do.
Okay. Hope I don't dox anything. So this is the first graph. These are you see here various European ethnicities: Norwegian, Lithuanian, Icelandic, Greek, and you see three basic colors. orange, blue, and green. Orange is early Neolithic, blue is Western European hunter-gatherer, and green is Yamnaya. I'm probably not saying it correctly.
Yeah, and Yamnaya was one of the waves of what we generally call the Aryans or Indo-Europeans that came from the eastern steppes. Is that correct here?
Both of these groups, they originally came somewhere from Caucasus. So they started there, then they had a different journey through different areas for thousands of years, and then they met again in Europe. And when they met again in Europe, so none of these groups started from Africa. These are all white type of people who started from Caucasus. Some of them first went through the Middle East, some went through the north, and at one time they met again in Europe, and then they mixed. Now, different percentages in the recipe created different ethnicities. So, for instance, you see Greeks are about 20% Yamnaya, 10% hunter-gatherer, and 70% early Neolithic. Now let's go to the other extreme on the top, Norwegians. They are 55% Yamnaya, 15 Western European, and 30 early Neolithic. So this is why you see this difference between Norwegians and Greeks. But they were both created by the same three ingredients, basic ingredients, because there are other smaller ingredients too. And the difference is different percentage. Now, here we can see the other ingredients. So in Europe, we have actually 12 big DNA haplogroups. And let's go again to two extreme examples. Let's go to Southern Europe, Greece, and you see the different colors here on the bottom right corner in Greece. These different colors are different haplogroups. And let's compare Greece with Poland. Greece has a little yellow, which is Slavic, Aryan. Poland is probably 60% Slavic. But Greece has also Slavic, probably 15, 20%. Greece has a lot of green, 25%, which is Greco-Roman. Poland has none. Poland has about 20% red, which is Celtic. Greece has about 15% Celtic. So you see, we have 12 ingredients creating all European ethnicities. So you have 12 ingredients, and by mixing them in different percentages, you create different ethnicities in Europe. But again, this is very important to remember. These are the averages in each country. The averages. So there might be people in Greece with more Slavic than someone in Poland. Because an average of a country does not represent exactly each person in this group. So it's very interesting to to look at these graphs and understand that how connected we are. And this is why I said that there are probably some Greeks with lighter skin than some people in France. Of course, on average, if you take the average, in France they have slightly lighter skin than in Greece. But there are many other factors too. One of the factors is the latitude. So if you took German people and you moved them to Africa for a couple of thousand years, slowly, after each generation, their skin would slowly become darker and produce more melanin. So one of the reasons why you see a little darker skin in Portugal, Spain, Italy, and Greece is because even if you had the same people living in Germany and Greece, after 3,000 years, the people in Greece would have a little darker skin because of the exposure to the sun and because we evolve. Our DNA is not static. Through each generation, we have small changes.
The red is Celtic, correct?
Yes, the red is Celtic, Basque, Saxon.
It's amazing to see, if you go back down, how much red is in Spain and Portugal, Italy. That Celtic and other mix, you said Celtic, Saxon.
Yes.
I mean, Saxon's Germanic.
No, Germanic. There are
Germanic Saxon, I see. Okay,
yes,
they're doing well. R1B, I see how they're doing it. Okay, so
yes.
it's not just Celtic.
They have two Germanics, Nordic Germanic and Saxon Germanic, which are two different colors, and then they have the Celtic, Basque, Italic, Frisian, Saxon.
Yeah, but you see how much of that red is at the R1B is in some of the South. It's amazing. It's very interesting.
Yes, and then it gets more interesting when you start looking at other maps. Here on this map is the West Asian admixture in Europe. Here on this map is the African admixture. So there are admixtures in some countries, but in very small percentages. And again, these are averages. So if you made a similar map for the US, it would show 13% African admixture. But this 13% African admixture could not represent the two of you because it's an average and it takes into account all people in the country.
That's fascinating. I think one of the things that is also lost upon a lot of people in the white positive sphere is that once we recapture our destiny, which we are going to recapture our destiny, once we recapture our destiny, we are going to be able to produce a healthier people, a brighter people, a longer lived people. We are going to be able to produce what we want. And that means that we are going to be able to magnify the differences that we want to see and mitigate anything that we don't want to see by way of reproduction. There can be very easy incentives and disincentives put in place with everybody having the freedom to choose the partners of their desire and reproduce with the partners of their desire. And yet these outcomes can and will be achieved by us in the future. It's not just going to be, there'll be redheads with even redder hair than there are today, or perhaps ever have been. And we are going to be as we have been thus far, the only people to produce this variety. We will be the only people to do it in the future. And once we have control of ourselves, our destiny, we will truly be able to do magic things. Think only toward, you don't have to even contemplate the science that we have done in the past, the science that we are doing now and predicted for the future. You can just look at our animal husbandry. Look at what we have done with the livestock. Look at what we have done taking these wild animals from the fields, from the forests, and turn them into things that are completely different. We will be able to do things every bit as glorious as that with ourselves. And again, there'll be no truncating of people's freedoms, of the partners they choose, and the people with whom they choose to have children. This can be done. It will be done by a leadership that puts white well-being first in all decisions. And therefore, the diversity of our appearances, the diversity of the different hues of Western civilization that we have produced in our countries, all of that will be amplified under a benign and glorious rule for white well-being. Now, we have a lot of super chats I want to get to, and it looks like there's no way to stop it, folks, but we are going to be going into at least one overdrive. Of course, having a Poseidon on, it's impossible not to have an overdrive with our good friend. So let me get to these super chats. We have Dino super chatting $5.11 by way of the familiar alternative and writing, empowering females destroys fertility and culture, as bad or worse than Planned Parenthood. Thank you very much for that kind investment in white well-being. We have Pamela super chatting with $10. Hello, guys. Supportive Red Ice member, late but here. Thank you very much for that and bringing up our good friends Henrik and Lana over at Red Ice. Pamela, thank you. The Thin Red Line is back with $10. Thank you very much for another kind super chat. I think the secret is that young women in their early 20s should team up with older men in their early 30s and have children. Then the women can re-enter workforce in their early 30s. Thank you very much for that super chat. Anglo super chatting with $15. Thank you very much. If one of you ladies can cure cancer, what can 10 of your children do? Well said, indeed. Well said. Would you rather have one woman who is a genius working on the problem of, I don't know, solar physics or curing cancer, or would you rather her have 10 children that could all work on that, or perhaps both? She has the children first and rears them to be intelligent, bright, lovers of our people, educated, intelligent, and then gives herself over to the science of curing cancer or what have you. That would be magnificent. And we have had white women that have been that glorious in the past. So Laura, super chatting, our good friend Laura. And by the way, folks, Laura is the member of our community who is here today and who donated this kind super chat by way of the familiar alternative. Not Laura, the content producer, the video content producers. It's Laura in our community who is helping Way of the World in his great project of uniting people who are feeling isolated. If you have not heard of this project, go over to Way of the World's channel. It's a fantastic thing that they both are working on. And watch the video. I don't recall the name of the video, but perhaps we can get a link up to it and see if you would like to participate in this program. Find someone in your community or a pen pal on the other side of the world that you can speak with. Laura, super chatting $15 by way of the familiar alternative and writing, in my younger years, I had 3 children. And now that I'm no longer able, I wish I had more. Take it from me, young ladies. There is no regret more painful than this. Motherhood has been the joy of my life. And young ladies out there, Laura is an accomplished, intelligent woman. She is speaking her heart there, and that is sage advice for you all to take to heart. We have Machiavellia sucks, writing with $1.99. Thank you very much. Our enemies don't like healthy role models. You 3, absolutely. They really dislike us. There's no doubt about that. Thank you very much for that, Machiavellius. Another great member of our rapidly growing community, by the way. Fashi, super chatting with $5 and on YouTube, and also super chatting by way of the familiar alternative with another $5 and asking a question for Poseidon. And Poseidon, I have a couple more super chats before you answer that question, but here's the question. Fashi writes, Eric Stryker used to be a commie. How does Poseidon view him? So hold on to that answer. And I will jump on over to Johnny Jones, super chatting by way of the familiar alternative. Thank you most dearly for that super chat to the cause of white well-being and writing, thanks for all you do. Thank you, Johnny. And we have finally Amanda Scott. Glad to see you back, Amanda. Super chatting with 10 pounds. Thank you so much. And writing, great show and discussion. Thanks, everyone. Thank you indeed. Thank you for being here with us. And I think that's all of them. Yes, I think that's all the super chats. So just to restate, Poseidon Fasci would like to know, Eric Stryker used to be a commie. He's now a nationalist. Fasci says, how do you view him?
Well, I want to be honest. I know the name. I've heard the name many times, but I don't know who Eric Stryker is. I've never seen or heard any of his work, so I cannot judge the specific person. But I'm talking generally. Generally, I know there are people who were communists and decided to come to our side. I can really not understand how their brain works, because although I'm 49 years old and I got red pilled on the whole situation a couple of years ago, but since I was probably a little child, I always felt and knew and realized that communism and some religions that I'm not allowed to mention are not good things. Also, I was always a race realist. I never felt this brotherhood with people of other races. Even decades before I got the so-called red pill. So I cannot understand people who were on the one side and moved so much. Of course, it's possible, but on a personal level, personally, I would not trust them, because if they moved so much from the one side of the spectrum to the other, then it's possible to move again. And I think we've seen this recently with a YouTuber of the alt-right who also made live streams and had very big names as guests, and I will not say the name, who was very popular on the alt-right. He also made very silly songs, and suddenly he went to the other side. So no, people who move so fast from one side to the other, God bless them, but I don't trust them.
That's a fair answer, brother. Jared.
Well, how much overdrive do we have? Because if we're 5 minutes away from wrapping up, maybe we should start wrapping up.
Well, I don't know, Poseidon. How long could you go for a double overdrive with us, which would take us to the half-hour mark?
I can go forever.
Well, I know I implied that at the beginning of the show. Why don't we go ahead? We'll do a double overdrive today, ladies and gentlemen. We're getting excited here. We're digging in for white well-being. Jared, take it away, sir.
Poseidon is known for his stamina, folks. All right. Well, of course, we can return to anything that we've spoken about so far. But why don't we talk a little about your End of Freedom video, another one that I have listed here, where you essentially talk about the pincer move of, on the one hand, there's increasing pressure on whites, we're all aware of. And on the other hand, as that grows, there's censorship and elements to deny our freedom when we begin to push back against that pressure on us. So I want you to take the audience through a little of that video and what you discussed there and some of the implications.
Yes, it's the End of Freedom video. I describe in this video a part of my red pilling trip. So how the war in Syria and how all these people moved into Greece through Turkey helped me wake up and look into some specific matters. How this fueled terrorism and a wave of probably Sharia law coming all over Europe in the future. And I woke up and I noticed that many other people woke up at the same time. So I see that after 2015, especially in Europe, where we had this so-called refugee crisis, Many people are waking up, but because the governments, the media, and the minorities notice that we are waking up, they don't like that we are waking up, and they reacted to our waking up. They reacted to our waking up by starting censorship, because the censorship we are all experiencing right now didn't exist, at least at this level, 3 or 4 years ago. This is a new level of censorship. And we've seen tiny channels get deleted. Like I had a channel with 100 subscribers get deleted, and big channels like Alex Jones. And I'm not shilling for him. I'm no fan of him. I'm just mentioning him as an example that no one has immunity. They can shut down anyone. So this censorship is not only on the internet, it's also in real life. We've seen Lawrence Southern, Martin Sellner, Brittany Bettibone getting bans. They couldn't visit the UK. Martin Sellner cannot visit the US. Jared Taylor cannot visit Europe. Again, I'm not shilling for them. I know exactly what each one of them is, but I'm using them as an example. So they are restricting our speech. They are restricting the movement of some people. And this is actually, I think this is a war. Now, right now, it's just a war on an information level and on a restriction on some movement. But this is going towards the next level. We've seen all these articles, or this. They even have college courses in the US about whiteness and angry white men. They are at war against whiteness. They want to vilify us, white people, European people. And the more we are waking up, the more they are scared and they are reacting. And I think we must also react. We must push back in a smart way. We must react. We must organize. We must spread information. And by we, I don't just mean the people who have YouTube channels or make streams. Everyone in our audience. This is one of my goals, to motivate everyone who's listening to us to either create a YouTube channel or a blog, or go start talking to people. And if you need arguments, all of us, we are providing you the tools, the arguments to use in order to wake up our people. And this can work as a Ponzi scheme. One person can wake up 2 persons, and then these 2 persons can wake up 4 persons, like a pyramid. And this is the only way right now to work. Spread information, organize, prepare, and of course make white babies, because the babies we create today will fight, maybe, unfortunately, the war in 20 years. A war that we want to avoid right now. We are trying right now to avoid this war, but we need to create the next generation, a bigger and stronger generation.
Well, very well said, and sobering, because that is exactly, we are trying, let me stop there. We are headed on a head-on collision between the morality of the white middle class, the average sensibilities of the many hundreds of millions of white people across Western civilization around our planet, is on a head-on collision, like a freight train, with the anti-white morality, no morality at all. Because obviously these average sensibilities of our people, white working class, middle class folks around the world, want to survive. They want to live. They want to be in a place where their children can be safe. And they have been duped this far. People like us who have been far-seeing, who have had the crystal ball of sorts and have been able to see into the future of what these people's lives and their children's and grandchildren's lives will be like. We have been talking to them, and for the longest time, they have been not listening. Part of the reason for that is because of what the anti-whites have done. They have infected these people with mean pathogens, taught them to ignore us, and part of it has been the fault of those in the white positive sphere using verbiage, using dialectics, using a lexicon that will also, and that has also turned off these people. And as a consequence, we have people who want to live because they are alive. That is something we don't need any more information about. We have a people who want to live, representing one freight train, and another one coming on the same tracks, heading in the other direction. That's the anti-whites who want white erasure. These two things are heading head to head. There's no stopping this if people like us don't get through to these many scores of millions of working class white people on this planet. Because it is this message of white well-being, this message of love and redemption, that is going to be the clarion song that they'll hear, that will change their minds potentially now at the 11th hour, that will take these white people who do hold positions of power and who are ascribed pro-white or white positive sentiments, when in reality they have been anti-white all along. These are the people that the anti-whites and the non-whites in general look at and say, some whites are in so much power, why are you worried about anything? All of those white people who are in power are anti-white. The moment that one of them stands up as white positive, they are browbeaten out of their position, they are defamed, they are defaced, and then they are quickly removed. So in the future, though, if this message of white well-being, this message of love and redemption, is able to reach them as a curative contagion, as it has been designed to do, as it has been demonstrated to do, as the anti-whites in positions of power in the governments of Europe have put their stamp of approval on that it does indeed work by preventing this message from reaching those people, doing everything they can. If this reaches our people, then, as I've said before, and I'll continue to say, those white people holding positions of power, those generals, those commanders, those politicians, those strategists, the deep state, if you will, the whites in the deep state, the FBI, the CIA, they will then say, enough is enough. There's this other route, and it's a route to peace, it's a route to freedom, and it is a route that we want rather than this head-on collision. So we are the ones, Jared, myself, Poseidon, and others, who are endeavoring with all of our strength, with as much as the anti-whites do everything they can to cut our tongues from our mouths, to reach our people, to prevent bloodshed, to prevent things like shootings and the like, and much worse, societal breakdown and all-out war across the West. We are the ones whose voices are being silenced, and we are the ones who want the peace in the West. So it's a sobering reality that Poseidon shares, that indeed it may end up being our children and grandchildren who end up in this fight. But I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome everyone who wants to stand by my side. If there's going to have to be a fight, and now it's a Cold War, it's a war of words. Occasionally breaks out into a hot war. It's a hot war when they come and arrest you, magnify the law, and lock you up for the totality of your life for something minor. That's when it becomes a hot war, not just when bullets are flying and lead is flying back and forth. But I will say this, if anybody is going to have to fight, whether it be with words or with fire, I want it to be me, not our children. I want it to be me, not the next generation of white little babies and white little girls, and the next generation after that who have to fight. Because I am not going to have them look at me like I look at the losers who preceded us, like I look at the losers who laid everything down, who refused to look at the evil in the eye because it was too terrifying, because it took too much, it demanded too much from them. They will never be remembered, and neither will any of these other whites who hide their heads in the sand today. No, their graves will be spat upon, their memories will be spat upon. I will do what's right. And anybody who wants to join me is welcome to join me. We got a couple more super chats before we get back to the conversation. Very well said, Poseidon. We have the White People's Press, good people over there, super chatting with $5. Thank you very much for the investment in writing. Great show, Poseidon, Jared, and Jason. Enjoy Mother's Day weekend. Indeed, everyone, let's have a big celebration for Mother's Day. We're talking about motherhood being one of the most blessed things we can do. Let's make that magical again. Let's make this, let's talk to our little girls about the beauty of that, about the magic of that. We also have a super chat by way of another alternative that's down in the description, given to us by Miss Samantha Fox. $3. Thank you very much for the kind super chat. And she writes, if Poseidon is the melted chocolate, then you, Mr. Kuna, are the velvet tongue. If she only knew how true that was. I will pass it back over to my friend Jared George or Poseidon for anything they would like to add to the conversation.
I'm sensing a theme today in what you're doing. You heat it up and then you throw it right over to me. I'm like, man, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready. Jason's in rare form today. I'm also, tell me if I get any feedback. I'm actually trying this without the headphones and have you through my computer speaker. So let me know if I sound okay or if there's any feedback that comes through. But yeah, Jason, that was what, number 1,236 so far of another off-the-cuff, beautiful, inspiring, impassioned speech. I have said before, and I'll say again, that these need to be archived. People are going to listen to this one day. But you're absolutely right. We only know what we have right here and right now. And hopefully it doesn't come to anything that's going to be any unnecessary conflict, but we have to be prepared to do whatever the moment in history calls for. That was quite a sentiment, and you're right. There are people who kick the can down the road, and we can't do that. What we're doing, no matter what, is facing this head on, facing the reality of what has built up over the last centuries, if you want to go that far back, but certainly since the latter part of the 20th century. We need to right this ship, and we're doing it in all the ways that we know how. And as Poseidon said, we have to do it intelligently, because where I began with when I asked Poseidon this question about his video, this pincer move, is that, yeah, they're putting pressure on us and they're censoring us. They know some people are going to react. They want people to react in that unintelligent way. They want people to just go nuts so that then they can punish those people as examples. So be wiser than that. You have to, yes, use your anger, get motivated, but channel it wisely. They want you to get off kilter. They want you to get off balance. They want you to do something stupid or say something stupid so that they can get you. You have to have that presence of mind. But at any rate, I have one more thing to ask Poseidon about. It's a little more lighthearted. I just want to ask you quickly to tell our audience about this video where Italy has this academy where the so-called migrants, invaders, the ones that they can't get out right now, they're making them go through boot camps and wear uniforms, even when these guys are not in the academy and they're out on public transportation. This is Salvini's Italy, ladies and gentlemen. So why don't you tell people a little about that? I found it amusing.
Yes, this was, I think, the most amusing story I read on my last Saturday stream. In one city in Italy, they created an academy where they take in some doctors and engineers from Africa, the most intelligent ones, and now here's the interesting thing. They live in this academy. They have to wear specific uniforms all day. They are not allowed to use their phones. They are allowed to use them only for a couple of hours each day. They learn to sing the national anthem of Italy. They are allowed to speak only Italian. And they are also working. They are cleaning up parks. They are painting the walls in schools. They are delivering food to old people. So they are working, and they are learning discipline. And their clothes, they have all their clothes. They have written on Italian, "Thank you, Bergamo." Bergamo is the city where they live. So thank you. And they have to wear these clothes, this uniform, even when they leave the academy. And they are allowed to leave the academy only on weekends and once during weekdays. But on 10:30, they must be back into the academy. So they are not allowed to stay up late. And I found this brilliant. Now, many Many people, unfortunately, reacted in a negative way in my comment section and said, "No, this is wrong. We should deport them. We should oh, various horrible things." And I'm not saying I disagree, but it's we must be realistic. Uh, it's not that easy. When someone arrives in Italy or in the US or in every country, you cannot just take him and deport him. You must go through some legal process. He will apply for asylum. You must examine his application and deny it. And then, in order to deport him, you must know from which country he came. Now, these people who, I don't know about the US, but the people who come in Europe, they have no passports. They throw them away overboard during their trip on the sea. And when they arrive in Greece, Italy, or Spain, they have no passport. So there is no way to know which country they came from. So, okay, you could take them and deport them. Where? To Kenya? To Zambia, to Nigeria? You don't know. And why would they accept them in a random African country if you cannot prove they are citizens from there? So it's not that easy. You must first establish their identity, prove that they come from the specific country, reject their asylum application, and then you can deport them. And also, unfortunately, we have the European Union, which is something like the federal government here in Europe, and individual countries cannot do whatever they want. They have to follow the rules of the European Union, or else and the European Union is printing our currency, the euro. They can stop printing money for a specific country. They have extorted Greece many times like this. It is not easy. It's like if California suddenly decided to go against the will of the federal government. It's not easy. So until we find a legal way to deport them, which is better? To have them running free during night on our streets and enriching our women and children, or having them locked up in an academy singing the Italian national anthem?
And cleaning up parks.
And
So-
cleaning up parks. Yes, because they will get free housing and free food anyway. But there is one group that gets free housing and free food and is free to do whatever it wants 24 hours a day. And there is this group who at least does some work and repays the benefits it gets, and it is under some control, at least for a few hours every day, many hours.
I think we have to, since we have the great Poseidon on, we might just have to set a tap record and go into a third overdrive if it's possible. Is it possible for Jared George? How tight are you, sir?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine.
What about Poseidon? Can you do till the 45-minute mark? We are 2 minutes away from the 30-minute mark. Can you do 45 minutes?
Like I said, I can go forever. I'm a god. Nothing stops me.
He's omnipotent, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to set a tap record because we have Poseidon on. We're going to make it something special, and we will read a couple more super chats that have come in the since we last talked about going into the second overdrive. Now a third overdrive, indeed a record. So glad to have you all here with us for this historic day with Poseidon. We have Luke super chatting by way of the familiar alternative. Thank you very much, Luke, a big member of our community. Very proud, very honored to have him with us. Super chatting with $40. Thank you so much. And writing folk tithing. Support these great men. Thank you very much, Luke. Coming from a great man, it means a lot. We also have super chatting by way of that same familiar alternative. Blue Eyes White Dane. Super chatting $50. Thank you very much. I think it's the first time I've seen you in our super chats. Thank you very much for the kind investment to white well-being and writing exciting times ahead in Denmark during the elections. As a new politician is using verbiage much akin to yours, he speaks of the well-being of Danes. And recently on national TV, He also mentioned the Great Replacement. I would correct him there. I would have him change that Great Replacement to white erasure. But other than that, I can say in the affirmative that there are people who watch these streams and who have read Go Free. I've spoken with them. They hold power, and I won't tell the anti-whites who they are, so we will keep that a secret. But rest assured that this very powerful message is reaching all the way around the world, and people of various stripes, income levels, and levels of power are receiving the message, and they are utilizing it in a way that benefits us and our destiny. So I will pass it back. It won't be such a hot potato this time. Thank you both for the kind super chats. And we have, if we don't, Jared, do we have any more of Poseidon's videos to discuss?
Oh no, we're just freewheeling now.
Okay, because we also have.
Talk about anything.
Okay, well, what I would like to, we did have this. I wonder how many people know in the chat, and perhaps they can tell us. And then I would like to know if Poseidon even knows. Looks like we had Pamela just super chat another $10 overtime donation. Good work. Thank you so much, Pamela. That's what we like to see. We get paid. You know, when I was a child, my blue collar family, when you worked a double overtime, there were such things. You got paid time and a half. Does anybody else have that history? Back when they used to do that, that's never done.
I'm getting a water, but yes, go on.
They almost never do that anymore. I know the employers are able to get away with no, you're still just going to get paid what you get paid no matter what. We got Dave the Impaler just super chatted $5. What is the biggest white pill and the biggest black pill you see in the West today? Great show as always. Thank you very much, Dave, for that. And we'll get to that right in a moment. Let Jared return. I wanted to see how many of you all have heard about the STEM high school shooter out in the Midwest. Has anybody, or shooters? I think there were two of them. I think there was an adult with black and purple hair, and a bit of a confused person about whether he or she was a male or female, and then or a juvenile who is a bit of a confused person, hasn't quite decided whether they are male or female. So I don't know exactly how they are being referred, but if you haven't heard about it, it's because why? For all of you who are going free, there's a reason why you haven't heard of it. What's it called? How many of you all know? How many of you is it coming to mind right now? This is a great story to bring up this Mother's Day if you want to help a family member or a friend that you'll be meeting with to go free. You want to get them started on the path. You want to talk to them. Ryan, WH, first one in, yes. Hush crime. It is a hush crime, what happened out there, because it contradicts the anti-white narrative. So they don't want you to know about it. So that is going to have a powerful effect on those that you reach out to this Mother's Day, who may be on the fence, who might be anti-white otherwise. Ask them if they have heard of the STEM shooting and talk to them about hush crimes. Remember, the moment you say, if you all watch that Going Free or have seen me talk about this before, the moment you refer to such a crime as a hush crime, you have already won the conversation, because your audience immediately understands that there is a power that is not serving white well-being. That indeed, that there is a power throughout the media, throughout the government, that is anti-white. So you immediately win that conversation when you begin talking about a hush crime. They, if they haven't heard about it, which they most likely have not, will then be in a position for you to educate, for you then to lead them a little ways down the road of going free. That can be the first step for many of you. And I wanted to make sure that you all had this opportunity if you were going to be with friends or family that need saving. So Poseidon or Jared, have either of you heard of that? And we also want to get to the biggest white pills and black pills on the horizon.
I haven't heard about this story, but I can imagine why. This doesn't serve the narrative. And this is exactly the war of information we have right now. They are talking about fake news when in reality the mainstream media are the fake news, because they are creating fake stories to feed to the population, and they are hiding the true crimes, and we are trying to show the reality, and they are trying to shut us down. So we are living an information war. And I want to clarify something. Earlier, when I said that the babies we give birth to today will be the soldiers tomorrow, I didn't mean necessary soldiers that will use bullets.
Mm-hmm.
This war started decades ago, the war we are living right now, and it will go on for a long time. We will not lose or win this war in the next couple of years. This is a very long process, and we need to create the next generation of our people who will continue this fight when eventually we become old. Now, they can continue this fight through an information war like we are doing right now, but there is also another aspect. Never forget that, unfortunately, in this type of democracy, this parody of democracy we are living today, every head has one vote. And the group that has more heads, it doesn't matter what is inside the heads. They might be empty, the heads, but the group that has the more heads wins. And we need to create the next generation of voters also, because they can win this war just because they will have more votes.
Right. So that, I guess, is answering the question from Dave about that's a black pill and a white pill in one, depending on perspective, as is the case with most things. It is a black pill in that if this continues down this route, just the most heads. This is also something, folks, that you can use with friends and family this coming weekend, is that when they talk about, well, we can't we can't say that this particular non-white group shouldn't be allowed or that non-white group shouldn't be allowed in because I know a good thus and such. I know a good thus and such. When it comes to democracy, the minority of a group doesn't matter. All that matters is the majority of that group. If the majority of group X is going to be voting a certain way, then that is the outcome you're going to end up with. That is the outcome you're going to achieve. So this idea that, well, I know fill in the blank with a name, and he's actually a conservative guy. So what? We live in a democracy. He against his 100 brothers in the voting booth doesn't matter. So, and at the same time, a great white pill, and Poseidon, feel free to add on to this. And this can be the question, I guess, maybe that we go out on. The white pill version of it is that we can get busy in more ways than one. We can get busy making children. I don't know. It just keeps hitting me. We can get busy making children, having families, and these will be votes, ladies and gentlemen. And when that matters and where that matters, and the circumstances where it will make a difference, which is certainly not going to be all circumstances. So don't take that the wrong way. But where it matters, it will matter that we have more people to vote for our views. So that's a definite white pill. But let's Poseidon, I want you to add anything you'd like to this black pills or white pills on the horizon, and then we'll get Jared's take on that as well.
Well, a very huge white pill is what I mentioned earlier, that there's a massive amount of our people waking up just within the last 2 or 3 years. We see an acceleration of people realizing the truth about immigration, the truth about the replacement plan, the truth about the powerful elites who control many aspects of our life. And the internet and the social media, which they created, is actually helping us So this is a white pill because we have the truth on our side. And eventually, no matter what they do, no matter how much they try to hush the crimes that they don't want us to know, the truth will come out. There's no way to stopping the truth. It's just a matter of time. The only question in my mind is if the majority of our people will realize what's going on in 5 years or in 10 years. And we must work to make it happen sooner, because the sooner, then the better.
Well said, Poseidon. Jared, your thoughts on the black pills, white pills in the immediate future?
I was just coming over from the chat. I'm not really, by nature, black-pilled. I think you have to be very discerning about what you pay attention to. But you have to be discerning about that very notion, because I'm not saying to stick your head in the sand like an ostrich. You can go on Twitter all day and all night and only consume these negative stories after negative story after negative story. So I'm not trying to circumvent this question and that our super chatter gave us, but I'm trying to answer it as closely to my own spirit as I can. So I'm aware that there are 100,000 things to be upset about, and we have to know the general trends and be realistic about what we're up against. But I don't internalize that. I don't let it ruin my life. I don't let it hang a dark cloud over me. So the white pill, first of all, is that there are many white pills as well, but the main one that popped out at me is that I see and know what our spirit is. And I know that we've been through challenges before. No generation is given a pass, okay? Everyone always thinks they're living at the end of the world and the most crazy time and this and that. There's always a mountain to climb. There's always a battle. There's always something to fight for. There's always some kind of imbalance to try to bring back in a better balance. We live in a universe of flux. There's never going to be perfect, eternal homeostasis. That's for another plane of existence, right? But we can do what we can to set things to rights and be as balanced as we can. And our particular spirits, and Poseidon, if you missed it earlier, please go back to this fascinating part of this stream where Poseidon actually showed the different breakdowns of European peoples and how we are, in fact, north, south, east, and west, all related as European peoples in one larger family. And that's not to say that we don't respect the different subgroups within, the different ethnicities within, of course. But we've been through challenges before. We have an amazing spirit. This may just be a particularly challenging epoch where, as I was saying before, many have said that there will be some kind of split. There will be some kind of culling. Maybe there is some sickness. There is definitely a sickness within our body and within the specific bodies of some of the individuals. And unfortunately, some of them are beyond repair, and they're going to choose in one way or another to obliterate themselves. But we have to choose to become the best versions of ourselves. And that's what Jason means when he says Promethean. When you read his book and you see Prometheus rising, when he says Promethean, it's the best instincts of our people, the best potentials, living out the best potentialities of our people. So I remember actually saying when I was on JF, and maybe it was just the mood I was in or the way the conversation went, that I was blackpilled about something in the United States. And I'm trying to remember what I said, because again, I'm trying to answer this as honestly as I can. And I don't want to, forget that I said that on a public square, on the public space, right? It's in the record. And it might have been about the United States, people in the United States not being as connected as they can be, but I'm sure this happens in Europe as well, to roots. And not that I'm an expert in this, but I do think that we would all do well, and this can take many different forms, to get back in touch with our folk ways, our folk tales, the folk soul, our ethno spirit, our ethno culture, both overall as Europeans, and then of course within your distinct subgroups as well, and how those two things flow into one another. But it also may just be the fact that sometimes what's closest to you, you're most critical of, just like teenage children are sometimes very critical of their parents. I'm sure Europeans, if you ask Europeans in their specific countries, they'd be very critical of certain things about their culture and their country. So I don't want to disparage the United States too much. Maybe it's just a grass is greener on the other side type of thing. So in thinking back to what I said on JF, I think it was in that kind of spirit. Obviously, there are some specifically different troubles on each side of the ocean, of the Atlantic Ocean. I know that I think our demographic situation is actually worse, even though they have the more potent, Islamic, the more violent element there. Not that we don't have violence here, but we both have our own. The point is, we both have our own versions of it. You can parse, what's worse, this aspect of the violence, or America is going to become non-white earlier. We can go back and forth on those things. We know that there are challenges, but ultimately, I want to leave you on this point. I do believe in our spirits. I do want to see more people get back in touch with the ethnoculture, with the spirit. I'm trying to learn more what I can, and we'll be sharing that and hope we can all learn together, reawaken each other. So maybe part of it is just impatience. You want to see it happening. So like Poseidon was saying, more of our people are waking up. So you could see two sides of that. Well, you're happy about that. On other days, you could say, man, with the decades, the craziness that have gone, all the crazy things that have gone on over the last few decades, why aren't more people woken up? So you can really, it depends which side of that you look at. But the main point is there's progress. Things are moving in a direction where more people are waking up. I see more connections being made, and we have to take what we can get and be thankful about that, work with what we have. There's a great momentum moving. There's a great energy moving. I see it and feel it. I see Jason nodding his head. He sees it and feels it. I think a lot of us do. So I will leave you on that.
Very, very beautifully said, Jared. Actually, that was fantastic. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it has come that time. Finally, we are going to tap out on today's show. So if we could get the mighty God of the Seas to tell us where folks can find him and what work he will be doing next. And any final thoughts that you have, my good brother Poseidon. Please, sir, go ahead.
Well, you can find me on my main channel here on YouTube, Poseidon. I have a backup channel, Poseidon Live, a third backup channel, Poseidon Archive. I have the Clown World channel that I created recently, where all the Clown World videos are and where the next ones will be uploaded. You can find me on BitChute. I am on some other social media platforms, but I don't really follow them or use them. So basically, it's YouTube and BitChute.
All right. Any final thoughts then on today's show, or any work you'll be doing next? And folks, if you haven't seen it, right after we tap out here, follow that link over to Poseidon's new video with some of my verbiage. It is magnificent. And perhaps even this Mother's Day, you can introduce your family or someone in your family by playing that video for them. Poseidon, any final thoughts?
Well, I encourage people to try at least once to watch my Saturday night stream, which is a party stream with music, memes, and all the news of the past week. I will start, I will make a political ASMR live stream from now on every week, probably every Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not sure about the day yet. I want to thank you both very much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure talking with you on air or off air. And my final thought is what the final thought that I have always on every live stream I do. I want to encourage our people to have babies. Don't waste your time. Don't let the years go by. Don't fall into the brainwashing that our enemies create, that they want to convince us that having children is a problem, it's expensive, it will No, don't believe them. Our people, for thousands of years, our ancestors, they always had children, a lot of children. This is how you were created, and this is how the future will be created. And also, children will give a new meaning to your life. I have three, and I am someone who 15 years ago I was the kind of guy who said I will never have children in my life. I was the type of guy who thought that he will always be a bachelor. I didn't like children. And yes, now I have three, and it's the best thing that happened to my life.
I think that's particularly on Jason's mind today, given by some of the double entendres. So he's submitting applications, or excuse me, receiving. He's open to receiving applications.
Jared, final thoughts. Where can people find you? What's going on there?
Where can people find me? Should I give out my address? Or
Not quite that.
maybe I'm taking applications of my own for a little redheaded spy. But thegreatorder.com is where you can find me, where everything goes through. There are different things in the works, so please check out where I am on social media. Follow me there. I have a channel here. I do this show with Jason. Obviously, our presences online are very closely linked, so hopefully you know both of us. But I encourage you, just for some odd reason, if you're new that's not odd. If you're new, it's not odd. But if you're not new, it would be a little odd if you're not subscribed to all three of us, but please do. We do appreciate your support, and we're doing everything we can in all of these different kinds of ways, communicating with different styles, sometimes doing it more intellectually, sometimes doing it more emotionally. You'll have to wait and see what else is coming down the pike, but some interesting things going on, and I don't like to say things before they happen. I know I've been saying that for a while, but yeah, hopefully you'll see the fruits of it soon. Definitely doing some collaborations. So that's all I'll say for now. But Poseidon, you brought us into triple overtime. It's quite a feat. It's always an honor and a pleasure to speak with you. And I hope that we can do it soon. The time flies by. You're a great person to talk to. It's always great to hear your perspective. And thank you so much. It's great to be a brother of yours and in this together with you, Poseidon.
Well said, Jared. I absolutely echo those sentiments. I want to thank you both, colleague and friend and guests as well. I want to thank you all in the audience, everyone who participated in the chat, everybody who just watched, everybody who will watch in the replay. Of course, a big heartfelt thank you to everyone who super chatted and invested in this most deserving cause of white well-being. Thank you all. A big thank you to our esteemed moderators. We had HB there, Phoenix was there, Spartan was there. Anybody, I didn't see anyone else. I think that was it. So big thank you to all of you for helping to keep Gresham's Law far away from the chat on the after party. We had, let's get a couple of salutes at spotlights of folks I saw in the chat. I saw Rick Sullivan today. I saw Jay Hess in the chat as well. I saw Michelle Votefire in the chat. And I also saw Andre in the chat. Great to see you all. We had a couple of late super chats as well. We had NPC162 super chatting $4.99. And again, just now, super chatting $1.99. Thank you very much for both of those kind investments in white well-being and writing. Jason, I have a pro-white boomer friend who understands charities are anti-white. He is not very techie. Can he donate once your organization is open? He can indeed, and he can donate to help make that organizational entity a reality, as it is still in its chrysalis, in its incipient state at the moment. I will put up my P.O. Box address on my website, or you can, NPC162, reach out to me on my website at the Contact Me link, and that email will go to me. I will respond to you with that P.O. Box. We also had Luke back again, intrepid as always, donating $10 this time by way of the familiar alternative and writing, "That is a great white pill, caring families in our community. Happy Mother's Day, those listening. Thank you all." Thank you very much, Luke, for the kind investment. Happy Mother's Day to you and your family. I have to say this, folks, from the bottom of my heart to all of you, a happy Mother's Day. Might be back tomorrow with Clarion, perhaps, on a Going Free stream. We shall see about that, whether or not. And I tell you what, after this prurient, this lascivious stream today, I am never allowing Poseidon to make my coffee again. And I will see you all again next time.